Okay.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the meeting of the School Board of Trustees. First, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Standing on my left and the right, we just do a roll call of all the board members who are present.
Cynthia Robinson.
Mark, we're going to do it.
Eleanor Messi.
Anna Locke.
Sorry.
John Paul. Jill Smith.
All right.
No one's online.
And we have nobody online, so we have a quorum. Yeah. All right, so we definitely have a quorum. Thank you, everybody. So we have a pretty full meeting tonight, so I'm going to try to keep moving as best we can. And so let's go to the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our mission of ECS is to educate each student to high academic standards using innovative curricula that will foster knowledge and love of and respect for the environment and preserve it for future generations. We grow citizens. Our vision is that every ECS graduate will be an actively engaged citizen, driving factor change in the world around them. I don't believe we have anybody sign up for public comment. So we've got item 4, which is a fun one, where we are recognizing a long-time employee, Dwight Rothman. Dwight, you want to come up and stand here and feel embarrassed for a few minutes?
Have to stand there.
You don't want to, you don't have to.
We'll stand.
Yeah, that's better. It's part of the fun. So I just want to, for the record and posterity, I want to recognize Dwight, who I only had the pleasure of knowing for a couple short years, but he's faithfully served as our Chief Student Services Officer. Is that correct? That's correct. Since 2015, and he's been a cornerstone of our leadership team. He has brought dedication, compassion, and deep commitment to school success. His vision and efforts have helped shape the Student Services Department and left a lasting impact on the lives of countless students, families, staff members, and the community as a whole. And as everybody knows, we really value our community. It's not just something we talk about. We do talk about it, but it really is an important thing, and I think it's unique. Dwight's legacy is defined by his integrity, his advocacy, excellence in service, championing strategic initiatives, and personally supporting students in need. As Dwight steps into his well-deserved retirement, we want to extend our gratitude as a board for his outstanding service, his visionary leadership, and contributions to ECS. His presence will be deeply missed but not forgotten. So please join me in wishing Dwight a joyful and fulfilling retirement. May it be filled with peace, adventure, and what he treasures most, spending time with his beautiful wife, Betty. Someday, hopefully I'll meet children and grandchildren. And so with that, Dwight, I'd like to present this certificate, which is in profound gratitude for your dedicated service and valuable contributions to the charter school, and as a lasting testament to your legacy and alignment with our commitment to environmental stewardship. A commemorative tree will be planted in your honor within Pittsburgh City Park for the Pittsburgh Forest Conservancy. Here you go. Daily, would like to say a few words, so I'll let you do some. Thank you
Can you guys hear me?
Thank you. I'll just say a couple of words. I've had the privilege of knowing Dwight in a couple of different ways. I got to meet Dwight when I was about 36. I had zero gray hair back then. I kind of looked, Dwight kind of looked like that. Yeah, exactly. And it was back when I was serving on the Pittsburgh Board of Education. And Dwight was the head of the IU for the city of Pittsburgh. And what I remember, there were several things I remember about Dwight. I'll come back to them in a second. But I remember Dwight taking time to help me understand important issues facing kids and education 20, 25 years ago. And I remember his commitment to kids and to the quality of learning. That was the first thing I remember. And then fast forward, I came to ECS and Dwight was here, which was really exciting. And I got to know Dwight in a different way, in a closer way. And what I can say about Dwight here is he took that same commitment to caring about kids and about learning to build the culture of learning we have here at ECS. Dwight has been largely responsible with some other great partners in building an awesome culture for our students. And that culture has also permeated the adult culture. And so he's effectively, with other great partners, but Dwight really spearheading it with his commitments to build that culture here for us at ECS. And so it is true that he's moving to retirement, but not too far away, so we do intend to call him, especially when we have issues with reporting. But that culture that he has created will last a long time here at ECS, probably forever. And I'm grateful for that and for all the work that you've done, the partnership and friendship. Thank you.
Push you up. So I'm going to try to get through this whole thing. We're writing it down. My very first day at ECS, I'm sitting in the cafeteria of the intermediate school way down in the basement. And I remember John McCann saying to us, introducing some of the folks, and he introduced you, Dwight, to all of us and your staff and said, this man, you're going to want to get to know this man because he does everything. And Dwight, that was true. And I have gotten to know you in many different ways. Very specifically kind of this year, really taking that mentorship for me and helping me grow as a leader and as a person who also values the things that you value, which are kids and teachers and culture, and being my confidant when I need one, and someone that I can just say, oh, that didn't go so well, but you help me pick me up off the floor and kind of keep going. And it's really evident when we are in interviews together and you tell, people ask the question, what do you love best about ECS? And you always have the same answer, and it was the people that I work with. And that is what I hope to carry on, is that you have made this place a place where people love to work because of the people who are here. I love to be here because you work with me, and I hope that we can continue that friendship long on, because you are a reason that we are here. You've carried ECS many, many years, and I am going to miss you very much. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. I can't even tell you, I wasn't expecting, I said we want to say a few things here, and I thought that would be fun, I was going to sit. I didn't realize how emotional this moment would be for me. I do know, I'm very lucky to be ending my career here. I was in many, many different places, and 16.5, almost 17 years ago, I convinced John McCann this would not be a success if he didn't hire me. And thankfully, he believed me, and he did. And so, I'm so proud of everything that ECS has become. It's an incredible place. I love it to death. But more than those accomplishments, man, it's the people I work with. It's people here. People past and present. They are smart, they're funny, they're caring, they focus on students, and that's exactly how I feel. Those are important things to me. This man said, when something that didn't go so well, then you figure out, okay, how do we make it go well? And anyone who knows me has heard the story numerous times, but I will retell it. I did say, and you're repeating yourself now. But a number of months into my working here, my wife and I, it was a Sunday afternoon, I don't know what we were doing, but she said, you know, this is really nice. And I said, wow. And she said, you're not depressed on a Sunday anymore. And that's been 17 years. Sunday has never been my depressing day. And I hope all of you have that same feeling where you are, because it's such a nice feeling to look forward to going and seeing these people and working with them on a daily basis. It has been more than I've ever asked for. And I thank all of you for the work you do and you're going to do for this school. The sky's the limit, as we always say. It's an incredible place, but it is built around people, and I think that's what's important. So thank you for this. Thank you for listening to me. And last of all, I have to say, as part of my moving into a new life, my wife and I have been watching our 20-month-old granddaughter a couple of days a week. And tomorrow is one of those days where I will be up at 5:15, drinking lots of coffee, and then watching her for 9 hours. So anyone would understand what that's going to be like. So I will probably slide down the back. Thank all of you, everybody. The whole universe. I've just been so lucky. I've been blessed. Thank you.
Thanks, Dwight. Thanks, everybody. Next item on the agenda, number 5, is the fiscal year 2025-2026 budget, draft budget. I will, everything do, just quickly, I'm going to read the resolution and then I'll open it up to any questions or discussion that board members would like to have. The resolution is 2025-06-2168, be resolved by the Board of Trustees that the 2025-26 school year fiscal budget of the environmental charter school be approved as proposed. I'll just note that we have had discussions about this, or versions of this, at a number of previous meetings, because our team did get it to us a little bit early this year due to some of the issues in there. With that, I'll open it up for discussion, comment, questions. Any board members or administration? Yes.
Thanks. Then we maybe wanted to ask a little bit about some of the plans for if the resolution passes, the busing middle school students obviously will transfer over to PRT. There's been quite a bit of concern from parents, and we had lots of public comment in the last 2 sessions on the impacts of it, especially families who have more than one transfer, right, in their busing. And so I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to talk a little about the kind of evolution of that conversation, and then also maybe ask you what are the concrete provisions that ECS is considering to help support families as they make that transition to middle school.
Thanks, Megan, for the question and the opportunity to talk a little bit about this. I'll say a few things, and obviously Randy and Shep can weigh in as well. So the first thing to say is I think that we've had a good discussion, with the board and with the parent population. We've had a couple of public comments at each of the sessions. We had a really good meeting that the PCO hosted. I just want to thank them for that. We had over 30 parents who were participating in that discussion. And it was a really healthy discussion. Not everybody was happy, to be sure, but there were a lot of folks who talked about different ways that we could, think about this if we go forward in this way. So I'll talk about that in a second. So the point here is I think it's been a good discussion. We were glad to get this in front of the board and ultimately the ECS community a little bit early to Stan's point, just so that there could be this kind of conversation. I think we also have had the opportunity as a team, and I want to just thank Vicky Shea and Elvin Petra for their work particularly, but others as well. Tanya Chair has been a big part of this. Gathering information about the students and the potential PRT routes and what that might look like. We had sent out some information about that a couple of weeks ago, so parents had a chance to look at what the PRT potential routes might be based on what would be the least number of transfers or the shortest ride time, those kinds of things. So we were excited to share that information. We did just share recently an email that summarized some of the data that we had seen from doing that work. We also summarized a parent survey. Dina and the communications team, Maddie, the team too, so it's really not that had put together a little survey, and we had some good information that came through that survey. And I can convey some of that to you if you're interested. But we sent that out to the parents and we sent it out to the board as well. So again, a good dialogue, good opportunity to gather some information. If the board does in fact go ahead and approve this, Amy Downs, who's serving sort of as an interim communications director for us, will be prepared to send out some sort of communication to let them know that the board has in fact, the parents know that the board has in fact voted one way or another, depending. And then if the board goes forward in this direction, we will obviously notify them that there'll be communications coming in the next next week and then beyond that as to how we're intending to support parents and families with the rollout of this. And a couple of things to keep in mind in that survey that we sent out to parents, I don't remember the exact number, but more than 50 parents responded that they would be interested in things like bus buddy systems or ride sharing, carpooling. So there were a lot of parents who were very interested in that kind of thing. And so we intend to see if we can sort of group parents and support parents and give them the opportunity to connect with one another. The PCO and Kristen Abe's house have been working to think about, is it possible to set up a preferred ECS carpooling app, for example, so that parents can connect with each other on that. Amy is working with Kristen, who's also working with Becky and the PCO and Sabine and Report to put together a Discord channel. And the idea there is to create a channel for communications that parents could, among other things, use to start to share information and connect with each other about transportation ideas, questions, and concerns. Also to that end, Michelle, who's done a tremendous amount of work getting this budget in order, and then getting it in order a month early, and then responding to lots of questions and making adjustments, and also working to continue to find savings even after presenting the first draft of the budget. Michelle's also put in some money, a small amount of money, to help us. Should we need to think about, do we need to purchase an app, or should we be in need of supporting it in some way with additional consultancy or things of that sort? It's a small amount of money, but the idea is that we would have something that we might need over and above some of the other resources that we would have available to support any kinds of need that might arise as it relates to this. So we're really trying to think carefully about that. And I think in addition to that, our team is, Nick Tudor is here, the principal for the middle school. He and his team are also thinking about how can we orient kids, particularly new students coming to ECS who may not have ridden PRT in the past. How can we get them connected and familiar with that work? And then there'll be lots of stuff going on forward from there. So I think this will actually be the beginning of a lot more work on our part, and we're looking forward to that. And I'm sure a lot of dialogue. As I've mentioned repeatedly, we will continue to watch what's happening with PRT and their budget and whatever changes they might make, and we might have to come back to the board. If the board goes forward with this, we might have to come back and make some adjustments and things of that sort, but we're going to be watching that as well. So I hope that helps, but I'm also happy to dig deeper on it.
Maybe one follow-up is kind of on the, obviously lots of work to do on kind of rolling it out and implementation, that sort of thing of this. But what are your thoughts on and plans for kind of keeping track of how things are going, as in early in the fall semester, in the first few weeks as it's going, and if there would be considerations for contingencies, if in fact there are, like issues that arise that wouldn't be thought of, or that.
There'll be a lot of that work that's going on. I forgot to mention one other thing. Dr. Cribs and the principals are also looking at our start times to think about what would be an appropriate set of start times for our schools. So as to align, do two things at the same time, to align as best we can with potential PRT schedule. So we haven't made that determination yet, but depending on how the board goes forward, we would obviously then take that into consideration. That would be one of the first things that we'd be communicating to parents. And related to that, we would obviously want to think about how best to align middle school and high school, since both of those schools would be aligned with PRT. And if there are older siblings and they're able to ride with younger siblings, how can we make that more possible? So those things we're already trying to anticipate, in other words, but obviously there are going to be things that we can't anticipate and we're going to have to react to in the fall time. I think we're going to be attended in a couple different ways. We're going to be monitoring attendance. We're going to be listening to parents. I'm sure there'll be a lot of feedback on those first days and weeks and months, so we'll be listening to that. We'll be continuing to meet with PCO and monitoring if we can the Discord channel and other things. And we can even more proactively do things like surveys and gathering information from families. So we'll continue that kind of communication work, and then as things happen, we're obviously going to have to respond and address them. I can't pretend to say that we'll know all of those things going into the school year, but we're trying as hard as possible to think about them now and anticipate.
Yeah, I think the contingency planning, it's so important, right? If, as modeled previously, if they send a single bus instead of a double bus on a pickup route, what happens if the kids can't get on, right? This is something, right?
Exactly. Well, it could also be on the way here, depending on the bus and the neighborhood. But obviously, communication with PRT, which we've sort of held off on until we know which way the board's moving. But once that happens, we'll be in deep conversation with them, and also with PPS, obviously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or thoughts?
Roger, can you speak to just even the history of transportation? I know the board and you all have done a lot of work to get us to this point. I think it's a helpful reminder to anchor how we got here. And this is not ECS's first instance of discussing PRT with PPS and others. So this is something we've battled for a number of years, but can you recap the history for us?
Yep. So just a couple of quick points, and this is a topic that's near and dear to me, not because I like it, but because I've been thinking about ever since my oldest son, who's now 39, was a kindergartner. So this has been an issue in my life for a long time, personally and professionally. As it relates to transportation for public schools, school districts often will provide yellow bus transportation for some students. And that transportation is reimbursed at a rate 30, 40 something percent, never much higher than 50% based on the formulas that they use. And so it's a rising expense for school districts. And school districts have found another method, which is public transit. It is aligned with our mission in many ways, so that's a good thing. And from the standpoint of a traditional public school district, that cost is 100%, and you just repeat that, it's 100% reimbursable by the state. So when a district buys a public transit pass for a student in the school district, they essentially pay nothing. The taxpayers of the Commonwealth will pay for it, but the local residents pay nothing, if you think of it that way. It's all, the taxpayers are paying in multiple different pockets, but anyway. But so for school districts, this is a way to reduce their costs, and transportation costs, as I said, have been going up steadily and increasingly over time. Pittsburgh Public Schools back in the mid-teens, I think, or early teens, moved many of its students, not all of them, but many of its students to PRT transportation. So students who attended some of the magnet schools like Kappa or Obama or SciTech and other schools were given bus passes through PRT. And they started giving charter schools bus passes through PRT. And ECS was, and they started with high school students and then moved to middle school students. And PRT will only transport students basically at the sixth grade level. So they won't transport below. I will note that there was one school district that tried to send kindergartners on PRT, and that's the subject of a lawsuit that's before the Commonwealth Court, I think. But anyway, the point is that districts have increasingly moved their students, and mostly charter students, but some of their students to PRT transits in this region. And in the case of ECS, that push came right at the time that ECS was starting its middle school, which I believe was right around 2020. And ECS decided, because it came very late in the school year, in the summer, actually, it came in July, if I remember correctly. I wasn't here, but if I remember correctly, it came in approximately July, and ECS was trying to get the middle school off and running. ECS decided, and in its communication to parents, said it was a temporary move, but they would foot the bill for yellow bus transportation for Pittsburgh students attending the ECS middle school. And that started, I believe, in 2020, the 2020-2021 school year, and went forward from there. It was also at the same time that we started to receive, because of COVID, we started to receive federal dollars in support of the school, and the district received permission. I don't know if it was for that first year or for the second year, but they received permission from the government to be able to use the funding of ESSER's funding to support the use of the paper public yellow bus transportation. Sorry. So that was partly how ECS had paid for this. We paid just a little bit less than $300,000 a year for this transportation for about 200 students, 230 students. Not every student used the transportation. That's an important note, but we had to pay for all the students who were assigned those buses. So we've been paying for it, I think, essentially for 5 school years, and we're recommending that the board move away from that and use the PRT passes to support transportation for our students. I will note that a couple of things. One, the ESSER's funding it ended in December of 2024, so those dollars are no longer available. I will note, and it's sad that Dwight's not here, but Dwight and Mandy were largely responsible for ECS, not largely, they were wholly responsible, with Michelle too, for making sure that ECS received and utilized every cent of those federal dollars. We didn't give any of it back. So they did a great job maximizing our use of those funds, but they are now gone. And as we look ahead, we are trying to make sure that our costs align with our revenue projections over time. You know, we've seen, and this goes to the larger budget discussion, but we've seen wild fluctuations, that's not uncommon, in the reimbursement rate, particularly from the Pittsburgh Public Schools. Some years we have a negative 3.36%, I think was the lowest year for regular tuition. Some years we've had a negative 1%. Last year we had a 12.11% increase. So positive, negative, neutral, these numbers go up and down, but if you average it out over time, our annual costs, our annual revenue increases at about a rate of 3 to 3.3%. And we want to make sure that as we're going forward, we're making sure that our budget lives into that revenue increase, which there's no additional money really for us other than that, and we need to live into that. And these costs are costs that we think that better utilize the money for programming. I know that's going to be a controversial statement, but we think it's better to utilize it to support the students and to encourage them to ride PRT. The last thing I'll say about that is that we've only been providing transportation for the students who reside in the city of Pittsburgh. There are middle school students who live in other communities who are riding PRT because they do not have a yellow bus option, and we're not providing transportation for them. So if we were to think about equity and making sure we're serving all students, that $300,000 cost would probably be a significantly larger number, because we would want to probably provide transportation to those students as well as a matter of policy. So that's another reason why we're recommending that we move away from that and move in support of using the PRT. And then obviously, we think it aligns closely with the mission of the school, and is important as far as all the work that we do here.
I appreciate that history, and to that end, kind of as a follow-up, it's easy to tie a one-for-one connection between all this, but, you know, you spoke a little bit, like, what resiliency and contingencies in this budget this year? Because we are really in uncharted territory coming out of the ESSER's funding. This was a new budget horizon for us, but while still dealing with all the cost increases that have been accumulated over the last 3 to 5 years. So, you know, going forward, what kind of contingency and resiliency do we have in order to summit these highs and lows?
So I think, first, I want to again thank Michelle Resnick for all the work that she does on a daily basis to make sure that we're living up to the budget and thinking about these things. But I think she's put together a budget, and I think if you want to speak to this as well, you should, but I think she's done a good job of putting together a budget that we have, if you're thinking about radical challenges that we might face, we suddenly are told, hey, all of your federal funding is dried up, or disappeared, or half of your reimbursement rate for meals, or other things like that were to happen. We don't want that to happen. We're not saying that it would, but were it to happen, we have places like many organizations where we would look immediately to figure out how do we hold our team together, continue our work, and maybe delay or postpone some of those expenditures for future years and future budgets while we plan and figure out what to do in the near term. Just not pick on one category line item, but I think if we had to make such decisions, we would turn to some of the capital expenditures that we think are important for the school and can't truly be delayed, it can't be cut out, but we could potentially, if we needed to, delay those for another year, potentially. Those are the kinds of things, but those will have to, a roof has to get put on the intermediate school in the near future. I can delay it for another year, and Michelle and I can say, okay, we can Band-Aid it for another year, but that's a building that needs a roof, and we think there are opportunities also to do things like solar, et cetera. So we have money in the budget for that, but, if we had a crisis, we might want to rethink that. But just as an example.
Thank you.
Were there any communications, or can you tell us about any of the communication that had happened between ECS and PPS on transportation fund, or also with PRT, just to provide a little bit of background of that communication?
We in fact, Michelle and I just met yesterday, Monday. We met Monday with Ron Joseph, who is the Chief Financial Officer for the Pittsburgh Public Schools. He's been in that role since Linda Lane was the superintendent. I think she hired him. He does great work. So we had an opportunity to talk with him a little bit about the charter reimbursement process, and he's desiring to improve that process. And so we had lots of things that we suggested, and he suggested some things back, and so that was great. And of course, we used the opportunity to talk a little bit about transportation. So he connected us, or he's going to connect us actually with their transportation person. But we've started those conversations. Tanya Cherry works with them all the time, so we have constant communications that way. But I think we're also going to want to have a longer, deeper conversation with them about some of the ideas we have if we go down this road about how we can make it a more efficient process for us, for PPS, and also for PRT. So those conversations, we haven't gone too far because we don't want to get ahead of the board, but certainly the groundwork is laid. And then as it relates to PRT, again, we started those conversations, but have literally not talked with them in a couple of months, waiting to see how the board wants to move. But we've met with them, and we have talked with them about what this might look like. Could we develop a partnership with them wherein we would have a relationship and we would be able to manage our student transportation and work with PPS to make sure that we're either reimbursed or they're paying for it up front or something like that. There's lots of discussion to be had there. We've talked with them about their budget issues. They've informed us that the timing for that cut, and any potential cuts that might come along, depending upon their budget, wouldn't be until early in 2026. So we would be able to watch and anticipate their budget, what they're going to do, and what that might mean for our students. So back to Megan's point about contingency planning, we have time to think about that. And they have told us that the cuts that they would consider if they need to get to that place for the routes that our students would primarily be using, they might see a reduction in the number of buses, so schedule, but not a reduction or elimination of the route. So those are the kinds of things that we've talked with them about. We've talked with them about their safety team. They've been out here, their safety reporting and how they do that. They've been here for our Green Roots event and sort of had information. It was one of the busy tables at the Green Roots events. Lots of people are asking them questions. And so we'll continue to find ways to get them on site and to think about how we can orient students to that work and then continue to partner with them going forward.
So it was mentioned that PBS merged instruction several years ago, but ECS made a decision to use yellow bus. Have you been able to think over those, have you been able to look at their change that they made and how that has impacted students or learned from anything that they've learned in the years that they've been doing it already?
So we haven't been able to look at their data,
I
but
wonder if it's even accessible. If
Yeah.
there's something we can learn from what they've done.
I mean, I think so. I can say from personal experience, I mean, I've observed lots of students and families that live around us, my students and my kids attend PPS. So we've been able to observe that and how PPS sort of managed this when they rolled it out, and it's not dissimilar, right? Communications and contingencies and responses and things of that sort. But I don't actually have, like, if I'm thinking about, well, how many families might choose not to go to ECS or those kinds of things. We know from the survey, I think we shared this out with the families, but we know that, while maybe 50 respondents said they were interested in these different things, 46 or 7 of them said, hey, up to 65 respondents said, hey, we might consider enrolling our student in a different school. So we think we might see some of that, and obviously we're going to monitor that very closely. But we've also looked at, hey, where are the applicants and the people on the waiting list? What might that tell us about the students? So we've mostly been using our data, and we don't have the PPS data. So I'm not sure that's a good answer.
Just one question, just like whether you can have access to the information that they've been doing it for several years, so you think there would be something?
But we can find out how many kids use their passes and things like that.
And how it's going, if it wasn't, they learned, yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe a follow-up on that is also like feedback from the students, right? Not only for the PBS students, but also for our own, right? So many of them will be going from one to the other.
Can I just respond to that real quick? I forgot one thing I wanted to call out. So, what's that?
You want me to comment on, are you gonna comment on the student that has been doing it?
Yeah, someone comment on, you can comment on others, but I want to just thank Sam Smallwood, who teaches in 7th grade. And I got to spend a day with him, I forget now, it was about more than a month and a half ago perhaps. And he and his students were looking at this question of the PRT, the shift to PRT and what that would mean. So they were doing calculations regarding their own ride time versus on yellow bus versus what it might look like on PRT. They were thinking about the environmental impacts. How could they possibly calculate that? That we were talking about budgets and what are budgets and how do they work? And so I do want to call out him for doing that work, because it was really, for me, I spent the whole day, not the whole day, but a lot of the day, many hours in that day in that classroom talking with students, and it was a fun discussion in all cases, and he did a really great job working with them, and they were really engaged. So we did get some feedback through that, but I think more seriously, or more to your point, we can do that, particularly when they start riding, if that's the direction that we move, and sort of gather their thoughts on how we can improve this.
Oh, my turn? Okay. So we actually have 2 middle school students that, one for about 6 months now, but another one by choice asked for their PRT issue bus pass because they did not want to be on the bus as long as their bus ride was. That one student was a 7th grader coming from the north side and has been riding the bus willingly all school year, the PRT all school year from the north side. The 7th student, actually a 6th grader, had to transition to PRT due to some situations where some coach asked for them to be removed from the bus due to safety issue. And that 6th grader from the last 6 months of school has taken PRT from the South Hills area every day with no issue. So,
I believe their attendance has improved after running ERTs.
something to take a look.
Any other questions, comments, thoughts?
I had one more smaller one about the state subsidies for milk, lunch, and breakfast. It looks like from the May to the updated budget, there's a decrease in the estimated amount of subsidy for food from the state. Do you mind talking about like what drove that change?
Yes, so
This is our first year of the CEP program, so all of the lunch was free for all, lunch and breakfast was free for all of our students. So last year was a projection based on what that would look like. And looking at last year's projection, there was a pretty significant decrease from what we had thought what we were anticipating was what we had. So that is based on the projections for last year. And does that new amount still cover the total amount you're expecting, or is that less of a reimbursement than you were, but like per student reimbursement that you were hoping to get for the same services? Maybe I can rephrase that. I guess, make sure I understand. You had a projection for how much you were planning to receive this year, and now you kind of downgraded that projection, and then also reflected that in the next year's budget. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And so, does that affect the potential like kind of expenditures that you are able to make next year because of your new projection is a little bit lower on the amount of revenue that you gain?
I mean, we still have enough adequate programs, students programs.
Okay. So no change in the service level necessarily related to this.
Actually, I have there's a question about our utility spend, because I see that they've all gone up, is significantly, and I'm going to also attest to that. Is that, I know there's based on projections, but do we see, is this based on kind of what we're seeing around the city, just these one-time increases in electric, and I see there's a large increase in electric.
Yes.
That just significant. Can you just talk about some of those utility increases just so that we get a sense of what cost is equalized on literally?
Right, yeah, I mean, those are based on our projections based on this year, so we're assuming it's going to continue, stay the same.
Okay. And so, and that's, okay, so that's not based on any kind of future guidance that we're getting from utilities, that's literally what we're dealing with right now. Okay.
Does that take into account the updated, or soon to be updated AC and the intermediate in those projections? That's not current utilization that you're projecting.
Yes, there was.
Thanks.
Okay. Unless there's anything else, speaking now, I'd probably suggest we move this, for a vote.
I mean, good work. Putting this whole thing together is extremely clear.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And I want to just give a shout out, appreciation to Michelle, to our administration generally, and also to the board. I think we, just based on the last few meetings, can say there's been a very robust discussion, with a lot of detail, especially on transportation, but not only on transportation questions, and trying to look beyond these issues, and so I really appreciate that. I think that's been really helpful, really productive, and it's what we're supposed to be doing. So I want to just give a lot of appreciation on that. But unless there's anything else at the moment, I would call for a motion. Anything else? Okay. Do I have a motion? Yes. Okay. We're voting on the budget. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the resolution is adopted.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Okay, we'll move now to the consent agenda. Just as a reminder, consent agenda does, with minutes, obviously, as usual, the financial reports, payments over $500, as well as a number of contracts up to $10,000, which are listed on page 3. Yeah, and as a reminder, we do have 5 other contracts that have been separated out. We'll vote on after we vote on consent agenda, just so there's no confusion. That's the consensus, excuse me, based on the rights, we'll include everything on page 2 and 3. So with that, open it up to any discussion, questions, concerns? Those items.
On payments over 500, there are, I'd say, a grouping of individuals on there. Were those tied to any specific, or were these field trip type reimbursements? They were just names unfamiliar to me, so I don't want to list them individually if we don't have to, but if they were tied to a specific purpose, I was just curious.
There were a couple that were 10,000, and those related to some student teachers that are getting money through the state. They get a reimbursement of 10,000 through the student teacher. So there's a few of them, are consultants that under approved contracts previously. Yes. And then a few of them are club payments.
You said club payments.
Yeah, contractors that are paid through some of the active school clubs that ECS offers. And then one of them was a reimbursement for a student that's getting transported for the event.
And then can you speak to the Quigley Farm or Quigley Family Enterprises one? I don't know that.
Yeah, so that is a specialized transportation vendor. And we provide service door-to-door services for students that need that support.
So in the transportation conversation, that's one that will continue then?
Yes. Yeah.
Just to be clear, that's a separate and different form of transportation, I mean, it's transportation, but, those are students who are required by law essentially for us.
So that's not yellow bus transportation that we were just discussing.
I mean, they could use the yellow bus, but they're typically using vans and things of that sort.
Any questions? Okay. This resolution is resolution 2025-06-2169. Be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the school that the consent agenda for June 18, 2025 be approved. Do I have a motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? The resolution is adopted. Thank you, everybody. Moving on, we have, as I mentioned, we have 5 other contracts which we're going to vote on separate resolutions. And so I will just, what I'm going to do is I'll start with the first one. I'm just going to, I'm just going to read the resolution and then open it up for any discussion or comments from the board or from the administration. The first one is resolution 2025-06-2170. Be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the school that the C&G Communication Services contract be approved. Any questions or discussion on this contract?
I can, so, as I mentioned earlier, Dina Calpari left ECS to take up a new role in a school district nearby. And her last day was June 6th. And Amy Downs, who used to do lots of communications for Allegheny County, but who recently started at C&G Communications when the prior county executive term ended, graciously and willingly offered to serve as us and support us in our communications over the course of the summer and into the school year. It's a great chance for us to look at our communication work and think about what could be different and how we might want to restructure that or do things differently. But it's also an opportunity for us to think about what kind of person we might need to fill this role going forward. So we've asked that you approve a 90-day contract for us to work with her over the next couple of months and begin to do a search for a communication director at some point during the summer.
Any questions, any other comments on this one? Okay, so I will, ask for a motion on this. Second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Resolution is adopted. Thanks. Thanks, Amy. 7.2, approve the resolution, which is 2025-06-2171, be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the school that the AIU Technology Services contract be approved. Open up for comments, questions. We discussed this previously. Okay, do I have a motion? Motion. Second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Resolution is adopted. 7.3. Resolution 2025-06-2172. Be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the school that the Henderson Brothers Healthcare Renewal Contract be approved. Any questions, comments, concerns?
I have a question about this. Just to be clear that the resolution is with our contract with Henderson Brothers, not the benefits that Henderson Brothers is, or package that they are recommending.
It's not.
Oh, it is.
Yes,
It's with.
it is for that, it's for the health, the provider and the plan.
And the plan, okay. I
As you said, you're looking.
yeah, okay, great. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. So, any other questions or comments? Before we get to vote? Okay. And just put it on the record, I guess, probably that you're abstaining and stuff.
Yeah, I'll be abstaining.
So do I have a motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution is adopted. Thanks, everybody. 7.4. This is resolution 2025-06-2173, be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the school that the literacy curriculum contract be approved. Questions, comments?
Could we just get background on this particular curriculum, the why, the history here?
That one, that curriculum, yeah, sure. I can also talk a little bit about the process, how we got there too. So we have a comprehensive literacy plan that was created through a team approach, and that team had our executive director of academics, our K-5 on it, all the principals, our literacy associate directors, literacy consultant, and all of our ELA teachers. And they first went through a process of trying to learn more about structured literacy, which is a state mandate now on how we are constructing literacy in the classroom. Then they created what they would consider literacy best practices by ECS. And they had a robust discussion and created a rubric around what new curriculum would be evaluated on. And they looked at different types of curricular resources. This one rose to the top. It was a choice amongst all of those people on the plan. It is a structured literacy approach. It got all high marks from the ed reports. They do kind of a compilation of all types of curricular resources. And you can go and look and see how it measures up against others. So not only did it get high marks on our internal rubric, but also on the external one as well. It is standards aligned. It focuses on high quality structural literacy for a diverse set of texts. It's designed to engage our students. It's staff goals for teachers too, and allows a lot of opportunity for the ability to supplement resources if needed and to meet a diverse set of needs. So it's going to hopefully do the thing that we need literacy approach writing, reading, vocabulary acquisition, and reading. And this is our move away from units of study into our structured literacy approach. So this is for our 6 to 12 students. It's going to really support all of our teachers. There's some TV associated with it too. And in the consent agenda, Lizzie Hexar and Anselmo are going to be helping us with this rollout plan from here.
Thanks. And we had, I think, last week, so I know at one point we had, I don't think it was for this meeting, but at some point have a future discussion, maybe, or board education, a little bit on literacy.
Yeah, we'll have the literacy team come and they can talk to you about that comprehensive literacy plan so you can understand a little bit more about what we think literacy looks like at ECS, and then also the community component too. This meeting is full.
A little bit. I agree. So, but I think we're all grateful for that. And obviously, there's a lot of discussion that goes on out the world about literacy, especially literacy, and especially since we are a school that is by charter, so to speak, by statute, required to be innovative. We want to make sure we want to figure out the reason which we are being innovative in that regard as well. So appreciate that. Okay. Is there other questions on that or comments?
You mentioned that PE rolled into this. I just know the high school English teacher weren't taught how to teach reading, also structured literacy came out now. You would have that background, but you're not going to have it in teaching for 5 or more years. I'm just curious what PE looks like.
So one of the things, we're going to bring all of the literacy teachers in over the summer, if this is approved, we can bring them in to help, first of all, read through the first units, make sure that they understand those. But all school year this year, and then also into next year, we've been pulling all of our literacy teachers to go through what structured literacy is. So the literacy teachers have that background. And then going into next year, Lisa and someone's going to pull all K-12 teachers so that everyone understands a little bit more about what literacy, structured literacy should look like. And then we have like that go-to person that kind of PD1 needed from the organization that company we need to. So we're going to do our consultant, our in-house, and then we also have some external. And just like we have our normal PD days throughout the school year and the PLCs, all of those teachers are going to be working together with Lisa and Lizzie to make sure that they revisit each unit as it comes. So I think that's really important. We can't just hand it to them and expect it to go on. We have had our 6th grade this year piloted the program, and they had some pretty intensive support from their associate director, and they did see some increase in scores with just a pilot of a curricular resource. So we're really hoping that putting this resource in 612 will give you that boost that we need.
I mean, you mentioned it's a state requirement for teachers to have structured literacy.
Correct.
And their contract training as well.
Maybe. The AIU is our go-to for that, so yes, we get training through there. Yeah. And the training that they would provide for structured literacy from the state is actually coming from like the SAS, the Standards Aligned System website, and it's all asynchronous, and so that works for some, and it doesn't work for others. So we're trying to partner.
Those are good questions. Anything else before we vote? Do I have a motion? A second? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion passes, resolution is adopted. The last one of these discussion contracts. Multitasking. It's resolution 2025-06-2174. Be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the School that the NSS Master Agreement contract be approved. Questions, comments, thoughts?
Have we entered into a prior contract with the school in the past?
Yes, this is a continuation for a student in an improved private school for next school year.
So this is a contract format that we were familiar with.
Yes.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, do I have a motion? Motion. Second? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion passes, resolution is adopted. Thank you. Right. So moving on to item number 8. This is our policy adoption, continuation of our policy review process. Which I won't go into detail on. I know for other meetings, just in the interest of time. But we have one policy that's been reviewed and under review for quite some time. It's been out for public comment for quite some time in a couple different forms, and it's been discussed at length, I'd say. And it's our emissions monitoring policy. First I'll read it. Resolution 2025-06-2175, be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the school, that policy 520, student admissions and water, be approved as amended. My initial question is whether we received any comments, public comments on this policy? No public comments. Okay. It's been out for a few months now. Yeah. Okay. So, just, I'll open it up for questions or comments on this policy. There are any. It doesn't look like there are any. So, I just want to make sure that is the right number, right?
Yes.
There was some confusion about the policy number a few times, but, okay. Okay, well, with that then, I'll ask for a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Okay, motion passes, resolution is adopted. Moving on to number 9, continuation of the policy review process. We have a number of policies that are going to be available for review and public comment on the ECS board website to be considered and voted on by the board at a future date. Are these are existing policies or any of these new policies or?
So, a couple things. One, the acceptable use policies are not new policies, but we are breaking it out. Unlike in the past, we just had one policy. We're breaking it out, have a policy for employees and a policy for our students and families. Just slight variations on that, but the same basic point and themes are very consistent. So not a new policy. Immunization and communicable disease, not a new policy. Homeless student, not a new policy. The homebound instruction is not actually, we need to make one more adjustment, and just because of the things that were going on this week, didn't have time to get that to you. This will not be considered until the August board meeting, so I'll send you guys a copy of that before we send it out for public comment, but we'll get it out by July, early July. Withdrawal from school is a new policy, and evaluation, reevaluation is also a new policy.
On the policies that are, I didn't see a lot of actual red line on it, so it's hard to see what had changed.
I can share the existing.
Yeah, just to be able to know
Yeah.
what's new about.
I can share. I mean, I would, to be honest, like acceptable use we've largely rewritten. And the last time.
Or even if it's just share the old one.
I'll happily share the old version. Some of these, some of these policies were approved when Dwight started. And so, honestly, I don't, I think,
So
I
the
would consider it a
internet
whole.
use stuff might change?
What's that?
I said some of the internet use things might change.
Honestly, it was really interesting, the emphasis on phones as opposed to, you know, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I read, the whole AI section.
There was an AI, we
There's
had
a
an AI
whole AI section.
which we, I mean, I'll be honest, you know, there was some question as to whether or not we should have put that in there, but we think it's good for us to start that conversation. It's clearly going to evolve and evolve quickly, but we thought it'd be better to have something, so take a look closely at that.
Has there been any input on this from the IU?
On the acceptable use, so we actually, Vicky had to leave, but Vicky and Eldon put together the draft working with the IU. They handed over their sort of model policies that they use, and then we modified some of it and shared it back. And so they've taken a look at it and are well aware of what we're proposing.
On the immunizations and communicable diseases, it looks in here like you're following Allegheny County policy. Does that differ from are there any changes from previous policy?
I don't believe that there are many changes. I will say, like, one change that Judy was emphatic about is we don't have paper records. So the earlier policy made reference to paper records, things like that. And I think when we spoke with the attorneys, their recommendation was to articulate the recommended vaccines pretty clearly. So that is, I can't remember if that was in the old policy or not.
Okay.
And it is, I should say, it's not just consistent with the Allegheny County, it's also consistent with the Commonwealth.
Okay. Does it differ from different public schools at all?
We didn't compare with that. We did not compare with that.
These, any of the new policies or any of the amendments to the policies, have they gone through legal review yet?
So we'll get those up. Some of them already are, the one isn't, and I'll get that to the board before we post it.
Okay. So moving on, that, I'm not going to read all the policies that are in the record. Just in the interest of time. Number 10, other business, important piece of business, according to our bylaws, we vote every year on officers, for officer positions, according to the bylaws of president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. The slate that was proposed at the last meeting, is President Sam O'Loughlin, Vice President Megan Rich, Secretary Matthew Mandulik, and Treasurer Charya. I'm going to read the resolution and open up for questions, comments, filibusters, whatever you look for. Resolution 2025-06-2176 be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the school that the 2025-2026 board officer slate will be approved. Any questions or comments about that, about the process? Okay. Now I see my hand to vote for this. Okay, well, why don't we have a motion on that? Somebody wants to make one? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes, resolution is adopted. Congratulations to the officers. And as we normally do, I don't know that it's exactly memorialized in the bylaws, but in theory, I think what we did last year probably would make sense is we will, again, the executive committee will confer to make sure that balance, make sure the committees are balanced, and appoint or reappoint a chair or chair of those committees. So that will be coming at some point. The next item is the scheduling of the meeting dates for the next year, for the 2025-26 school year. I will, again, read these as they are in the record. But just so that everybody sees them there, and I don't know if anybody has any questions about those dates or concerns, problems with those before we move on. Okay. So those are one.
Yes, so just for your information, I did try to do a quick, comparison to our school schedule, and it doesn't look like we have any conflicting dates next year with holidays, just so you're aware.
Yeah.
And they'll stay kind of on the same schedule, the, third Wednesday.
Yes.
And just one thought, historically, and obviously I'm here, we have a meeting in July. It's something that we can, we didn't have a chance, I guess, to really talk about, something we can consider, and think about whether that, makes sense to do, whether that puts us in a difficult position, or whether that's even the right month to have a meeting. I don't know what people's availability necessarily is, or what kind of business there is, but it's something to think about, especially if you need to convene, or if there's a way to utilize that time. I don't know. No, I think we talked about this a little bit, Patrick, at one point, but I don't remember what the.
I'm open to however you guys want to do it. I might be calling you July for a meeting.
Yeah. That's kind of where I was going with that. But yeah, there may be ways to, it's just something we don't want to just assume happens because we've done it that way in the past. I think that's something we've thought about. So if anybody, either now or after this or in the future has thoughts about that, feel free to let me know. So moving on to 11. These are the reports, committee reports. I don't have any thing to report on the executive committee. Obviously, it's full agenda. I'm going to the rest of the members of the executive committee, and I think they would like to report on. I'm pleased that we have a couple of prospective board members here tonight. So thank you for your interest and thanks for coming to this blockbuster meeting that we have.
Can I just ask for the executive committee, what is the plan for, executive director review?
Yes. Oh, that is a great, you will all be getting an email tonight. About the. No, this is great.
Asking the teacher for homework.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we have to do it.
Yeah,
It's our
so,
obligation.
So, we have, put together, I have everything ready to go. There'll be a, 360 review of CEO's performance that I will consider to be mandatory by all people who get it, except by the board particularly. But there will be a mix of, it'll be all board members, it'll be direct reports. There'll be a self-evaluation, as well as, leaders of the organization that will be filling out, this, review. At that, we'll leave it open for about 2 to 3 weeks, at which point all the information, all the responses will be confidential. So I really encourage you to be as transparent as possible. You want to land that Patrick, I think go for it. It will then be compiled by the executive committee, which you just voted upon, and you'll be searched over all identifying information whatsoever, and then will be presented. But the whole goal is to get as many points of feedback. But that is going out tonight. I'm ready to go. It should not take more. Well, it depends on how much you have to say about Patrick. It should not take more than 15 minutes. It is particular. It's meant to collect as much feedback as efficiently as possible. But if you have a lot to say, you can go to town.
Reviewing with him directly.
What's that?
You as EC are reviewing directly with him. You're not just like handing it down.
No. We will be reviewing it, and the information will be shared. I mean,
I just want to emphasize, though, you've emphasized repeatedly, this was not only with the names and stuff associated with the comments, but it'll be sort of thematic and anonymized so that nothing will be essentially traceable back?
Nothing will be traceable, and I will guarantee that. So, yeah, this will be reviewed with Patrick, but this is all kind of in the spirit of transparency. This is, Patrick is going to be, I don't know. There's not going to be any secrets. Yeah, I guess in terms, except for who we're said. But yes, that'll be coming out soon. And so, does that work for the, I just want to make sure that works for the administration as well, so.
I mean, the only thing is, this organization shuts down for the first week in July, so as long as you give people 2 solid work weeks to fill it out, I think that would be good.
Okay, great. And the way that everybody will access it will be through their ECS email addresses. So that's also important, so that we don't have like a rogue person out there responding on behalf of anybody. So everything will be directly to your ECS accounts.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks to Logan for spearheading that effort, which I appreciate. So,
Yeah.
And I know Patrick's gonna appreciate it. You feel like a gun out of tank.
That'll be good. Okay, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, should be fun. Well, next report is the governance committee report. I asked if there was a report or if somebody from the governance committee wanted to give a report, but I'm looking at the roster, I believe somehow I am the only person from the governance committee at today's meeting. So, and I don't have a report. Maybe we want to get back to our executive and start looking at our committees and rebalancing, we'll do that. But anyway, hopefully get some of our folks back and seeing anything. Education committee, is there any report?
Sure, yes. I think we want to start with just graduation.
Yeah.
It was amazing. I have to say, having it at the Circuit Center was incredible and so mission-aligned and beautiful. And your welcome, where you kind of talked about the connection, was wonderful. So, and then I love seeing from there. Before the mayor was there, that was also a wonderful piece. So I think we had more board members there this year than we had last year. And I would make a push that I think it's something that all board members should strive to do. So get next year's graduation on your calendar now. Personally, I see graduation as sort of the reason why we do what we do. At the end of a journey that we've had with families and children, and so I think it's very important as board members to be present at graduation. So I make a push for that. That was, I mentioned that at the committee. That's just something I kind of bring up before. Then we started to dive into some of the PSSA data that I think Mandy is going to dig into this summer. Lots of great questions. She may be reaching out to somebody in particular who wrote it to help understand some of the data. And I think those questions then will come back to the board in the fall as we kind of dig into why we see what we see and the difference between that data and what we have in the map growth testing, the connection between the two. There's lots of questions asked around that data. Then we talked a little bit about an assistant principal search. And I don't know if there's anything you want to say about that, Patrick, or maybe we should just say that.
We're deep in the search for an assistant principal for our high school. We're currently in the screening process and hope to have someone in place before or a selection meeting before we go to that July this week. We know that means have 2 years in that space to start the school year, and the planning is very important.
So that's moving forward. We're glad to hear that. And then we just talked about high school stuff, which I think is going to come up a little bit later. So that's it.
That's great. Yeah, I just want to echo what you said about graduation. I wasn't able to attend last year, but when I was here this year, it was fun sitting next to the mayor and all that stuff. But yeah, I agree. Everybody should want to come. It's one thing that I really can't, but just to be a little bit serious for a second, it's a long meeting. One thing that I thought about a lot afterward, and then what does it mean? And I kind of made a joke of it a little bit because I remember my own graduation very stated, and the person that you least wanted to hear from was the chair of the board of trustees. You graduated, you're like, what do you have to do with anything? And there's still some truth to that, because a lot of this, what we do here in these meetings is can be very dry. It's all necessary, but I think, the graduation sort of puts it all together, I think, in a really interesting way for me, about why we do this, why this is all worthwhile. But specifically, it's easy for people to understand, a great teacher that you develop a relationship with. It's easy to understand why that's important. It's rare, but it's easy to understand why that's important. It's the person you dealt with. They can influence you and teach you to be, and you can influence each other. What's really interesting to me about that, and thinking about what I was going to say, and that kind of funny part of it that they don't know who I am or any of us are necessarily, is that it's a real good reminder that in a healthy civilization, a healthy society, a healthy community, and this is something we preach all the time, that there are all sorts of people who care about you, care about what happens to you, want to make sure that you succeed, that you don't know, that you're never going to meet, and we're never going to meet them, maybe sometimes. And in a healthy community, that is how it's supposed to work. That everybody's doing their part, and you don't even have to have a relationship for it to be important. And that really came home to me after I sat down and thought about it after the graduation. Why was that so interesting to me? And I just think that's such an important thing, at least for me personally, to remember about what we're doing. That, we don't even have to have a one-on-one impact to make this worthwhile. Anyway, so I just want to put that on the record, I guess. But I'm glad, Jill, that you brought graduation. I was going to mention something about that as well. With that, I'll move on to Finance and Facilities Committee report. If there is anything else to report, I know we just did budget, so.
We just did the budget.
Yeah.
So that's effectively, I don't think there's anything else, that's it.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of what I was guess. We talked enough about finance.
Yeah.
All right, do we have any CSFT report? No. Okay. So I know Becky sent a PCO report. Again, in the interest of time, I'm not going to read the whole email. I'm just going to summarize the highlights, and we can put the email in the record. And thanks to Becky again for all the work and also for sharing this report. It's valuable. Patrick already mentioned some of these things up in the Discord channel for parents. I believe details to follow is what I gathered from the email. The PCO, she reported PCO also passed their budget and set their calendar, elected committee members for next year. There was, she also mentioned that there is a play date for the K through 5 students, I believe, on Saturday, July 19th from 1 to 3. I'm sure details are available. Wherever details are available. But I'm sure people who need to know will figure it out. And also she mentioned they're selling uniforms for kindergarten, first grade student welcome day. So, thanks to Becky for that.
Sam, can you forward that to me so I can start to enter those into the minutes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can I just say one thing?
Sure, please.
Yeah, so I think I would just simply like to thank all the members of the ECS team. So our teachers, our paraprofessionals, our custodians, our office managers, our principals, everybody that works here. It has been, for me anyway, but I think for all of us, it's been a really good year. We've had bumps and ups and downs. We've had the weather, interesting different storms that we haven't dealt with in the past, perhaps. And we've had to take on some challenges, and we've had some really exciting moments. But I just want to say thank you. It's been a really great year. And for those folks who are on the 10-month schedule, this is a great time for them to re-energize. And those of us that are 12-monthers are already in the throes of planning for the 25-26 school year and looking forward to the August weekend of professional development and getting back to it. But before we do all that, let's just say thanks to everybody for this great school year that we've just finished.
Yeah, appreciate that, Patrick. Thanks for sharing that. I'm sure we're, on behalf of the board, I'm sure we've all seen what this year has been like, and obviously it's been an interesting year in many, many ways. We're grateful for all of what you do. So next, we're gonna, in a second, I think we'll go into executive session. We'll make a motion to go into executive session, but and then I think after we do that, we'll take about a 5-minute break, just so everyone wants to chat or say hello to some of our respective board members. We can do that, and then in 5 minutes meet in the other room to have our executive session. If that works with everybody else. Is there anything else before we do that? If not, I will ask for a motion to go into executive session. And second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, we're going to go into executive session.
Thank
Oh. I don't know. He put it right down It's not that. It's kind of silly to have a camera and mic. Just get it off the website.